I've always thought that my life is my biggest project. And so I thought, well, now that I have a process, can I apply it to my life? I really think that our lives are like great and complex design projects. And it started as an experiment and it's been growing ever since.
That was Ayse Birsel, and this is episode 98 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley. I am your host, and this is the Chopped Podcast. You know, this is the podcast designed for people just like you, bloggers who love food. My goal every week is to share with you thoughts, stories, interviews, everything related to food blogging so we can all learn together about what works with food blogging and maybe even a little bit about what doesn't. Today I'm talking to Ayse Birsel. She's the award-winning designer, workshop leader, and she's also author of the book, Design the Life You Love. If you've ever worked in a toxic work environment, and you know, who hasn't really, right? Then you know it's not a lot of fun. And I don't know, for a lot of people, it's leaving those toxic work environments that builds the passion of designing your own career. And I think maybe that's, what's behind it for a lot of us when we're starting our own food blogs. We have this vision for something better in our life. The only thing is you have to be kind of careful. As Ayse talks about in our discussion, working for yourself is both a blessing and a curse because it can make you crazy at times. So you can learn things about yourself you never even knew. You can also bring all those bad habits from your past into your present if you're not careful. I mean, come on. All you have to do is listen to a podcast or read some blog post talking about discipline and bootstrapping and dominating your day. And it's also aggressive. Oh my God. Anyway, if you could design the world that you would love, what would that be? What would that look like for you? I think for a lot of us, it would incorporate some discipline. I mean, otherwise, what are the chances we'd actually get anything done? But, it'd have a combination of both compassion and intuition and discipline. And in fact, Ayse and I are both fans of Martha Beck. And in one of her O Magazine articles, she wrote about the importance of having both intuition and discipline. So anyway, Ayse is a product designer, and as a result, she developed a process for designing lives. And that's something that we can all now use. She's done it in workshops, and she's now incorporated it into her book. So she wrote this book about it, and that's what we're talking about today, designing the life you love. Isn't that just wonderful? It's what we all want, right? Okay, before we get to that interview, congratulations to Sarah Menez. I hope I said your name right. She's with the site Life's Little Sweets, and she is the winner of the bonus ChoppedCon gift bag. Thanks to everyone who participated. We will have more giveaways coming your way so soon. Okay, let's get straight to today's interview with Ayse Birsel. So put on those earbuds, turn up the volume, and let's talk about all things food blogging and so much more. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have Ayse Birsel, author of the book, Design the Life You Love. Ayse, welcome to the Chopped Podcast.
Marley, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, well, I'm so thrilled to have you on the show because I'm really looking forward to talking with you about your book. I think it's such a great book for this audience of creative folks. But I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your background and what really led you to write this book.
Oh, great. So my background, I'm Turkish. I grew up in Turkey in a family of lawyers until I realized that I love the human scale of industrial design. And I came to the States, to New York, to do my master's at Pratt Institute in design. And then I stayed here. And, I've been designing products, everything from office systems to toilets to kitchen tools and utensils, you name it. Even automobiles, I've been designing it.
And somehow that led you to, you do workshops on creative design now too. I mean, and not just like creative design as in how to design products, but how to design your life.
Yes. So how to design your life came about because a couple years ago, I developed my own process, creative process, and I called it deconstruction, reconstruction. And then I've always thought that my life is my biggest project. And so I thought, well, now that I have a process, can I apply it to my life? And I really think that our lives are like great and complex design project. So, and it started as an experiment and it's been growing ever since.
That's so beautiful. I just love that because I feel like maybe I'm just waking up from a dream where I realized, that I had this power or this ability to design my own life. And so hearing you say that just kind of gave me the chills like, yes, this is a perfect conversation.
I love it. And it's interesting that you say that. So many people are drawn to this idea of designing their life.
Yeah.
And there's something, I think it's this intersection of life and design that really feels very natural. Because I've been working as a product designer or industrial designer for all these years. And when I would tell people I'm an industrial designer, they'd be like, well, so what do you do? Are you an engineer? Are you a stylist? I'm like, no, everything you see around you is designed by an industrial designer. We solve problems. So after all that, you would think that, designing a life would be a hard concept, but it's not at all. It's like a natural for people.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that you say it's natural because for me, as I'm in this early process, it kind of feels a little difficult. But let me just make this a question I think that everybody can relate to. Okay, so this podcast is mostly for creative entrepreneurs and specifically for food bloggers. I mean, we have other people who
Yay.
listen to this. I know everybody
I
loves
love
food,
food,
right?
Yes.
That's great. But what I'm learning about going through this process myself is that, I think a lot of us have come from like maybe toxic backgrounds as far as the work, where we've worked at. I always like to refer to my previous boss as like Dilbert. I mean, it was a very toxic environment. And I find that when I'm working for myself, if I'm not careful, it's very easy to kind of pull some of those, I don't know, those kind of habits, those toxic work habits into my own work. And I really don't want to do that. I was just curious if you have ideas for people who are, new to working for themselves, how they can go about doing that.
Yes, I think, working for yourself is both a blessing and a curse, right?
Yes.
It's the best of worlds, but then it's also not easy to do. And one of the things that I talk in designing your life is to understand that you cannot have everything, and we all have constraints. So we either need to go along with them, or we need to use them to our advantage. So part of the design is knowing what to leave out. And then what you can't leave out, how do you work with them or how do you turn them into advantages? And I think this is true for working for yourself as well.
Yes, so you could easily, I mean, I love this because I am one of those people. I have the Myers-Briggs personality assessment and I want to do it all. And so I see your point though, like kind of focusing on your biggest strengths can be part of like, kind of like if you're a designer for products, you're looking at the raw materials you've got available, the shipping and all of these kinds of things. If we can look at ourselves like that and say, okay, here's where my strengths are, here's the materials I have available to work with, and what can I do with that?
Absolutely. And like from my own experience, what I find is that when you have your own business, you end up doing almost everything.
Yes.
You can't say, well, I won't do that. It's like I'm past that. It's like you have to get on your knees and scrub the floor if you need to, or like paint a wall if you need to. And so what I've found is that there's some things that I love and there are some things that I don't love. But the things that are my biggest strengths, my biggest strength is thinking differently and creativity. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that I will do first. And this took me a long time, as obvious as it sounds, but I do it early in the morning when I have my highest energy level. Mm-hmm. And I start my day thinking creatively, designing something or drawing something. And then if I do that even for like an hour, that makes me feel like I've accomplished something the rest of my day. And the rest of my day could be all the chores, the meetings, the emails, whatever. But if I've done that, that creative moment where it's like my best self, right?
Yeah.
So in a way, I guess that's what I mean with like, we can't change everything, but maybe we can move them around. And for me, this was a way of moving it around and saying, okay, this is my creative habit.
Okay, so one thing that I have done is I stopped taking in any external I don't know, anything from the external world in the morning. So like maybe I used to check my phone, maybe check my emails, check the news or whatever. And I've decided that I don't check anything external anymore. I take a little walk by myself. I I might listen to a podcast, but that usually I listen to ones that are, very positive or are encouraging. And then I do like you said, kind of like a morning journal and meditation. But I love the idea of adding something of creative, even if it's just like drawing a very quick picture or something. I like that idea of using your hands to draw something.
Yes, and I'm so glad you mentioned that. This is something that if I could, I would have everyone draw for 5-10 minutes a day. And a lot of people say, oh, I don't know how to draw, and I find that that's so not true.
Yeah.
We've all drawn as kids,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be like beautiful drawings, but we know how to draw, just like we know
Yeah.
how to add 1 + 1, and we know how to write a sentence. We know
Yeah.
how to draw. It's just that unfortunately the education system is such that it kind of beats that out of you for most
Yeah.
people. And so one of the things that I've learned in doing Design the Life You Love workshops is that people are actually incredibly creative. They just need, first of all, they need to give themselves permission, but also they need a process and set of tools. So my book starts with a warm-up exercise. That's a drawing exercise. And I just say, draw something. Draw a salt and pepper shaker on your table, or a flower, or, whatever you
Yeah.
see in front of you. That really is like a signal to your right brain that you're going to think creatively. And I find that it's a great way to start any project, because most of us, doesn't matter what we do, we're creative in one sense or another. So yes, draw.
Yes, draw. And you actually say in your book, you equate playfulness with non-judgment, and I think that's really
Yes.
important. So if I try to not be judgmental of what I'm drawing, that might help.
Yes, and there's this great exercise, talk about not being judgmental, that a friend of mine taught me and my kids actually. And that is to draw something without looking at your paper. So basically, you look at whatever you're drawing and you can put your
Yeah.
hand under a box or under a napkin,
Mm-hmm.
and you just draw it. So there's no judgment, and it's really you just have to keep yourself from peeking. Yeah. And then it's really amazing because often those drawings have something incredibly beautiful, and you've done it, and now,
Yeah.
once you've done it, it takes you like 5 minutes or even less. And then you take away the box or the napkin and you look at it,
Oh,
and there's no judgment. So it can't
yes.
be exactly what you're looking at, but you've just done a drawing. So that's,
You know what's so great about this? I don't know if you've read the book by Elizabeth Gilbert called Big Magic.
yes, I love that book, and I love her podcast. Yeah.
I do too, yes. But she talks about how we are all makers. Like, I don't know. I was very surprised. I went to the museum after that, and I was very surprised at how many pieces of art at the museum actually are things that are like tools or pictures, vases, things that people actually have used, that we are makers. And so I think it's easy to kind of get disassociated with that. And I think the idea of just, making yourself draw a picture, that you are originating that, you're creating something. I think that's really important.
Yes, and back to this idea of being playful.
Yeah.
I tell people that, when you're playing, you're like a kid. And kids, they don't judge, and they don't,
Yes.
they just do and learn and
Yeah.
try at the same time, right? And that's really part of the drawing exercise, is also trying to get back into that childlike
Yes.
experience. and the whole book and designing your life is about being playful with your life, because life is a big topic and it's complex, granted, for all of us. But when you're playing, you're kind of making new connections and thinking about the same things differently. And that leads you to think creatively from a different perspective. And you might have these incredible new insights about your life and how you want to go about it. And that's exactly the mood, you want to have when you're thinking or designing your life.
Ah, that's beautiful. Really great stuff. Okay, so speaking of your book, I have to tell you, I love it. It's beautiful. There's a lot of exercises that people can use to kind of go through this process of designing their lives, that you kind of laid out. Did you illustrate it yourself?
Yes, it's all my drawings. Actually, you were asking about how the book came to be. And I first drew the drawings, and then I wrote about what I drew.
Oh,
and
wow.
That's how I guess a designer writes a book, our language is visual, so the whole book is visual.
Yes. It's very visual, but I also like that you've kind of for example, you might create a Venn diagram of life, and then you create the space for us to do that ourselves. So I think that's pretty nice.
Great. And I was talking about that with a friend the other day, and he was saying, look, Ayse, there are these levels that one can interact with this idea of designing your life. You could listen to a podcast or read a story about it. That's one level, I guess, entry level. Then you can get the book and kind of read it and go through it. That's the next level. And then if you do the exercises, that's the third level. And then if you come to one of my workshops, that's the fourth level. And then if you bring that into your everyday life, and try exercise every now and then you're really developing the skill. And the more you do it, the more skillful you get. And I thought, that's great. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's almost like a level of fluency, right? Like you can be fluent and read a language, but not necessarily speak it. And then when you reach the point that you can speak it, then you're really fluent. So I kind of think that's what you're saying. Like when you reach the point that you're living it, you're fluent in designing your own life.
Absolutely. And he was saying that he has my book, Design the Life You Love, on his bedstand, so when he wants to get inspired, he just kind of leaves through it. And I thought, oh my God, I never thought of that could happen when I was doing the book, to be one of those books that, because I have my own set of books that I keep close to me. And when I need inspiration, I'll just leaf through them. And for him, my book is a book like that. So
can you tell us what are the books that are on your nightstand that inspire you?
Oh, yes. There are a couple. One of them is The Happiness Hypothesis that Jonathan Haidt wrote about. He's a cognitive psychologist.
Yes.
And it's around a kind of a historical evaluation of, and of course, through psychology, what makes people happy. And I really love that, and it resonates with me. Another book is Twyla Thorpe's The Creative Habit, which is beautiful, about her creative habit and how we develop and nurture our creative selves. It's beautiful.
Oh, wonderful.
And I could go on and on. It's
and maybe Elizabeth Gilbert too.
And I have Elizabeth Gilbert, and then a new book that now I'm keeping on my table is called Jocelyn Glei just came out with her new book about how to manage your email, and it's called Unsubscribe. And I'm trying to master email, so that's my new go-to book.
When you say master email, you mean from the perspective of the user of the email, or getting people to subscribe to your email list?
No, Unsubscribe is about how to manage your email so that it doesn't manage your life. So it's how to become more efficient and just around email, because it's all consuming.
Let me just say, I need that book.
Yeah, you should. It's great. And it's also illustrated, which makes it lovable.
Yeah. Oh, I love illustrated. Okay, that's good. And I honestly, I swear I have kind of a level of anxiety about my email, and And so I would love to read that book, and I'd like to feel more on top of it.
Yeah, and you will. I'm using it. It is making a difference.
Okay, good. I want to read that. Okay, so you say designing life is like making soup because, well, I'll let you explain. But this our audience is mostly food bloggers, so I know they're going to love this metaphor. So can you go into that a little bit more?
Yes. So Marley, this was about. I needed a way to explain the process quickly and get everyone to understand what deconstruction, reconstruction, my design process is. And I thought, okay, we all know soup. So let's take chicken soup. If you deconstruct chicken soup, what do you have? You have all the ingredients, right? Mm-hmm. And you could say chicken and water and salt and carrots and you name it. And then this next step is point of view. How can we then look at those same ingredients from a different perspective? So you can start playing with chicken. What if I didn't use chicken and I used pork? Or what if I left out any kind of meat and made a vegetarian soup? And so that the point of view is starting to open up your mind to different possibilities. Mm-hmm. And then reconstruction is about saying, well, I can't have everything. What are the things that I'd like to have? And you can think about that from an emotional perspective and say, okay, even if I change the ingredients or how I make the soup, I'm still emotionally, I want this soup to be calming. Intellectually, I want it still to be traditional. Physically, I still want it to be chunky. And spiritually, I still wanted to feel like my mom's food. And so those are, you're reconstructing it. And as you reconstruct it, you're making some choices. And then the expression is, then you make your soup again. And maybe instead of making chicken soup, you might make a vegetarian soup, but that still has your selected emotions and physical qualities, the intellect and the spirit of chicken soup. It's just a whole new soup. So that we do that together. And then what's always fun is the people who are in the workshop will take it to very different places. And I think the example I give in the book is one time we did it together with like 20 people, and we ended up with a chicken soup popsicle. Because as they were, yeah, I know, as they were playing with it, they were like, well, why do we need a bowl? And if we didn't have a bowl, how could we have like chicken soup on the go? And then they were like, well, we could freeze it and then it could be a popsicle. And so it's, and that's really the playfulness of it.
Yes.
Is you can play with the ideas until you get to a point where you're like, yeah, that's a soup that I'd like to try. Mm-hmm. And but your starting point is, first let me take what I know, chicken soup, apart.
And the nice thing with that is that you don't have to come completely from scratch with the idea of soup. And I think sometimes I feel that pressure when I'm if I'm thinking about, quote, designing my own life, I feel like do I have to start completely from scratch? But the idea of knowing that you can use some things that are already out there is kind of comforting.
Yes, and actually, you make me think it's never a complete design. It's more of a redesign, because we all have a life, and again, it has its challenges and it has opportunities and it has some constraints. But really, the whole point of it is to know that you can think about your life creatively, mm-hmm. and that instead of your life coming at you, you can go towards your life and think about it differently, creatively. And your goal, to me, the big goal is, how can I design a life that is true to who I am? Mm. And how can I build coherence between my values and who I am and my life? Mm. And I talk about, like, you're the user of your life, right? Because as designers, often we design things for other people.
Right.
But this is one place where we can design for ourselves. And the whole idea is that you get to design your life. You're the user of your life. But then collaboration is really important to design. So then once you have a great idea for your life design, you can bring and you need to bring other people into it and tell them, this is what I'm doing. You need to come and help me, and give them roles and kind of ways for them to help you build the life you love.
That's nice. Yeah, very
It
good.
starts with you, but then it continues through collaborations.
Because we don't live in a bubble. We have to, and talk with other people. We live with other people. We have to involve them at some point.
Absolutely. And, I think making them feel like, hey, I'm thinking about my life creatively. Here's how I'm imagining it, and you're part of it. And now let's do it together. It starts to build a very different dialogue.
Yeah.
And actually, people who've come to my workshops, it's really what keeps me going is the kind of responses I get from people where they'll email me or send me a note, or I'll run into them on the street and they'll say, oh, Ayse, your workshop, it changed my life. And that's so powerful. And my sense of it is they've changed their life. I just gave them a set of tools and a process. But that's the power of design. Design is transformative, and it allows you to change your life positively. And it brings other people into the mix, and you collaborate on how can making this happen, and then you can always redesign because context changes, and you're like, okay, well, here are the things that I will keep going forward, and here are the other things that I will tweak. And so it's an ongoing, very organic process as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I'm really glad to have this book because I think I agree. I feel like it's giving me a set of tools to use to work through that. But before I had this book, I thought I would give you a little life story of what I did. I actually cut my hair really short, and it was kind of a brave, courageous thing on my part to do. And then it was interesting because after doing that, I realized, I don't know, I kind of redefined myself in a way that I really didn't expect. Like I went home and I was able to go through my closets and throw out a bunch of clothes that I had been struggling, and I know I needed to get rid of these things, but it was just so much easier. And I wondered if you have some feedback on, is that kind of like a low hanging fruit, some ideas that if you're having some struggles on redesigning your life, sometimes just cutting your hair or doing something like that can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And also, even low-hanging fruit is not so easy, but it's that notion that you're empowered to change things, and it could be your hair.
Ah, yes.
It could be your clothing. I teach at School of Visual Arts, and I had a student, and her thesis was about creating a uniform for herself. And she experimented with this idea where she threw away or put away all her wardrobe. And she said, kind of like Steve Jobs, right? Yeah. She said, I'm going to wear, black t-shirt, black pants, belt, this kind of shoes. And she went and she bought, I think, 5 or 7 sets of the same thing.
Yeah.
And just that change impacted her life at an incredible scale of how people related to her, how they recognized her, how it simplified her life. It was phenomenal. So what I'm saying is kind of looking for those things that, yes, maybe some changes are really difficult, but there might be other changes that we could do that are seemingly easy and can have profound consequences. And it empowers us to feel like, yes, here are some things that I can change.
Oh, that's nice. It's like a little bit about doing the playfulness with ourselves, huh?
Yeah, and also, exactly. And, one of my biggest design themes is simplification. How can I take something complex and simplify it? And so when I hear you, cutting your hair, I'm like, okay, isn't that simple now?
Yes. Very simple.
Exactly. And then my friend's story, my student's story, isn't that simpler now? Yeah. Yes. So one area of exploration is how can I simplify my life? One story that I love is from the artist Marcel Duchamp. And I had read somewhere that he had simplified his life by eating the same food for lunch every day. And I'm just kind of speaking from memory, but it was spaghetti with butter and some cheese, and that was it. That was his lunch every day. Now, I love that idea. It's so simple. It takes one complexity out of your head. It's like you don't have to think about lunch.
And you don't have to spend hours preparing it or minutes, hardly any time at all. Just it's there and you're ready. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Marley, it comes back to your own values. So one of my values, as I mentioned, is simplification. So if I know that, and what I'm suggesting in the process of deconstruction, reconstruction is when you reconstruct your life, knowing that you can't have everything, what are the three things you want as your three key emotions? What are your three physical qualities? What are your three intellectual qualities? And what are the three spiritual qualities that you want in your life? And that gives you a 12 piece matrix. And if simplification is one of those things, then you look at, well, how can I simplify my life? I can cut my hair. I can always eat the same thing at lunchtime. I can always decide to wake up at the same time and kind of make a list of those things, and those become your to-dos. Now, for somebody else, simplification might not be at all their value. Something else could be. And then the process helps you identify what that quality is. So for somebody else, experimentation might be their number one value and in intellect. And so, okay, then you look at, well, how do I experiment? What are the different experiments I can do? The small experiments, the medium experiments, the big experiments.
Yes.
So,
because hair will grow back if you don't like it.
Exactly. And so then what you're doing is you're identifying, kind of making a convergence around what matters to you. And then you think about, well, if these are the things that matter to me, how do I express them? So,
and then you lead your readers on to creating a manifesto. And I love the idea of this. Is this kind of taking aspects of those three areas, the intellectual, emotional, and spiritual, and turning that into kind of like a guiding life?
And the physical.
Yeah.
Yes,
oh, physical. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And the manifesto, what I love about the manifesto is action filled. And so you bring those thoughts to actions, and it becomes, I will simplify my life. And then you do a little explanation. I will simplify my life by doing this, this, and this. I will, be closer to my friends, and I will do this by this, this, and that. So the manifesto is kind of taking charge of your life and saying, again, to me, it's all an experiment. And until you try it, you don't know whether you can do it or not. So the manifesto, like any manifesto, before you do it, before you bring it to life, it's a set of action words, but it pushes you towards the future.
Well, and what I like about that too is, as a creative person, entrepreneur, writers, whatever, we can be sitting in front of a blank screen sometimes, and the pressure of creating something of nothing from a day-to-day basis. I don't know. I think it can be kind of a lonely place to be at times, and also from that loneliness can stem fear. And I feel like the idea of having a manifesto, like something I could probably start my day reading, like you're saying, if my goal is to live my life a certain way, and I have that written down, I feel like that would help me stay in touch with who I am in a better way. Do you think that's true?
That's true. And you make me think of Steph, who's a children's book illustrator and a marketer from Amsterdam. And she came to one of my workshops, and afterwards she said that her vision of herself was that she was Big Bird from Sesame Street.
Yes.
And her qualities were that she stands tall. She stands tall, she's kind, and she's strong. That was coming out of the workshop. And then what she did, she transformed that into, just like you said, a daily ritual where every morning she wrote to me and she said, every morning I start my day by saying, I stand tall, I'm kind, I'm strong. And then I note what I'm going to do today that match up to my qualities. And to me, that's so powerful. And she
Wow.
finds a way to be strong, to stand tall, and, be maybe vocal about something, and then to be kind.
That's beautiful. And I mean, the character Big Bird also has a level of vulnerability about him as well. And I think being strong and yet somehow vulnerable and playful is just, that's very powerful.
Yes, it really is.
I love this. Okay, so I have one last question about your book, and that is, I oftentimes wonder about this topic of imitation because I feel like as a creative, it's easy to want to I want the recipe to be out there so that I can follow that recipe. And, like sometimes it's easy to think, oh, well, how do people, when we're doing food photography, for example, oh, well, oftentimes when people are shooting a cookie, this is how they shoot it. And, but at the same time, if I want to branch into my own style of creative, I'm designing my own life. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on imitation versus, creating your own form of art and your own path.
I love that question. I find that it's, probably the answer lies somewhere in between, right? I often talk about, like, for all creativity, we need inspiration. And when we gather inspiration, what we're doing is we're looking for parts of our solution in different places.
Yeah.
And so, maybe you have this intuition that what you want in your idea going forward needs to have some light in it or some lightness in it. And then so you might look at different examples of whether it's food that's light or architecture that's light. And then maybe it's, again, something oriental, let's say. And I'm just making this up as I go along. But you might then look, okay, so Japanese art and Japanese cooking or Chinese cooking. And so what my suggestion would be is all of that is welcome and in a way necessary to think about what you're interested in, your values, what really inspires you and excites you, but then deconstruct them. And so don't take them as they are. Look at their parts and pieces and then reconstruct them and bring them together in your own way. And what you'll be doing is you'll be diverging. So looking at multiple examples of something instead of just imitating one thing. And then converging, but converging based on who you are and who you are as a creative person or as a writer, blogger, and then bringing it together. And I guarantee that you'll come up with something that's original, but at the same time relatable.
Right.
It maybe uses cues that we could recognize, but it's your own original. Kind of connecting the dots.
I see. So it may be like the process if you're, designing a chair, you're not like going to start from scratch. You're going to look at all the different kinds of chairs that are out there and maybe even the history of how chairs were done in Egypt or whatever and using all of that to kind of draw into your own creative space.
I think so. And I often say that, in design, design is all about imagining the future based on what we know today. It has to come from what we know today. But we have these different tools. And again, in the book, I share some of them. Inspiration is one, metaphor is another. And some of the other things are like turning constraints into opportunities, or changing hierarchies, something that you think is really important, push that into something that's not so important, and then take something that's really important to you, and or something that's not important to you, and think about it as if it was really important to you. We all have these different tools to think differently. Use those, and then out of that, decide and reconstruct a new idea.
Ayse, thank you so much. That's just Wonderful. I really encourage everybody that's, trying to design a creative life to get this book. It has wonderful exercises that you can do yourself, and I don't know, it's to kind of lead you through the process of designing your own life. So, okay, so I have a couple of fun questions I'd like to ask people at the end of the interview. Are you okay with that?
Yes, we're playing. Yes.
We're being playful, yes. So what's one food item you can't live without?
Oh, that's so easy. Feta.
Ah,
I'm Turkish, remember?
yes,
That's like,
yeah. It's part of the job description of somebody from Turkey. You have to like feta cheese.
it's part of my genes. Without it, I would, wilt away.
Yeah. Do you have anything favorite that you put it on, like a salad, or what do you do with that?
Oh, everything. Bread, salads.
Yes.
Feta and tomato.
Yeah.
A great combination.
I imagine your favorite is from Turkey, or do you also find it in New York that you like it as well?
What I love about New York and actually where food has gone in the States is you can find these ingredients everywhere. So I can find Turkish feta, Bulgarian feta, Greek feta, Israeli feta, or French feta. My favorite is Bulgarian feta. But when I'm in Turkey, see, the Turkish feta I find here is not quite how it tastes in Turkey. But in Turkey, I love Turkish feta.
Interesting. I actually have been to Turkey, so I don't think I tried their feta there though, but it is wonderful.
How could you escape feta in Turkey?
I know,
That's funny.
I know. I was younger then, and I had a very limited palate.
Oh, that I understand. I have
Yes.
my kids are like that.
Okay, so what's the favorite app on your phone?
What's my favorite app? Hold on. I'm thinking. What's my favorite app? My go-to app. I guess these days, Uber.
Because it gets you around where you need to be, huh?
Yeah, but it's, the weather app, very basic stuff. I wake up and I look up the weather and the weather app and.
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite? Maybe you'll inspire me.
I think that's a very good question. What's my favorite app? I'd have to say that I probably go to Instagram the most, although I do have a new meditation app called 10% Happier, which I've been going to a lot. And it has a bunch of different meditations, and one of them, like how to eat mindfully. It's really a good app. I like it a lot.
I'm going to try that.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. Okay, so do you have time for TV at all? And if you do, what's your favorite show?
So I don't have TV.
Okay.
I got rid of it when my kids were little.
Yes.
But I do have, today with computers
yes.
and Apple and whatnot, you do have TV.
Yes.
But you know what? I don't have something favorite because I find it addictive.
Uh-huh.
So I try to read books as much as possible and not get hooked on TV stuff. So that's really the thing.
I love that. That's so good.
My kids and my husband, they make up for my,
Yes.
for my absence from TV by watching lots of stuff. And I sometimes get hooked on stuff, but I try to avoid it, and I try to read a good book. There's so little time, right? It's
yes.
Again, you have to make choices. So I've made my choice.
I like that. And do you ever feel like sometimes the conflict of, you want to spend time with your spouse and they want to watch the show and you kind of want to read a book? I mean, it's complicated.
It's complicated also because we all have different tastes. So it's very hard for our family to get together and agree to one thing.
Oh, so
but I'll tell you, I was hopeful the other day because we all agreed that Imitation Game about Alan Turing's life story was something that we all loved. So there's hope.
Yep, that is hope. And say the name of it again, Imitation Game?
Imitation Game.
Yes. I think we have watched that. It's a movie, right?
Yes, it's Alan Turing's story in the Second World War and breaking the Germans' code Enigma. So
yes,
I recommend it to everyone. My kids are, let's say, 11, 12, and then BB and I. It's very hard to find something that we all can agree and want to watch. So that was,
I can imagine. Okay, so
that was one great film.
how can people find you online?
Oh, yes. So thank you. Go to aysebirsel.com, and that's AYSE Birsel, B like boy, IRSEL.com. And please find me. And may I do a little self-promotional thing?
Yes.
If you do find me and you want to know more, go to my Facebook page, Design the Life You Love by Ayse Birsel. And if you like us, then I would be very grateful, and you'll know what I'm up to, that I might be in your city or the upcoming workshops.
Yes.
So.
Wonderful. Ayse, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I had a wonderful time.
So did I. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks to Ayse Birsel for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. Be sure to go to choppedpodcast.com to learn more about today's show. Thanks to everyone for your reviews on iTunes and Stitcher, and also your shout outs on social media and emails to me personally. I have loved it. It's wonderful. Please keep it coming. You inspire me, and I hope today's show is helpful and inspirational to the work you're doing every day. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.